You're tuned into 9 to 5 Work Rebels with your host, Ebony Gale. This series is sponsored by the PRCA's Race and Ethnicity Equity Board. To learn more about REEB and its mentoring scheme, visit prca.org.uk/REEB. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Gems in Comms series special, brought to you by 9 to 5 Work Rebels. I am your host, Ebony Gale, and today I'm really excited to be speaking with the lovely Claire Quansah, who is founder at Quansah Consulting, about her journey into PR and comms. Now, welcome, Claire.
Thank you.
You are most welcome. Now, I always like to start off the podcast by saying that essentially I create this series special to give a nod and give flowers to people of colour within the industry, within PR, comms, marketing, that are doing some wonderful work and that have managed to carve out a little piece of that pie for themselves. So well done to you, Claire. Okay.
Oh, thank you. Very little piece.
It's a piece. As long as a piece is great. Okay. So no, thank you. So as always, I like to start off by asking you to tell us about yourself and what you do, and whether you've always wanted to work in communications.
Cool. So thank you again for having me. Really looking forward to the conversation. So I now work as an agency advisor, consultant, helping them on kind of operational type needs. So processes, ways of working, and often people related operations. So how they work with clients or people management and people development. And that's something I've been doing now for just about around 18 months. But my background is it's agencies. I've always worked in PR and comms agencies. First job out of university was in a PR agency, and it's something I've always enjoyed. I think I'm probably one of those people, even though I wouldn't say I fell into it. At university, I was the person that really liked kind of discussion and debates and things, and that art of trying to persuade people to understand something. So using storytelling to get people to kind of think your way or be able to explain something. And I think that's probably how I then became interested in communications and PR. So ended up going on a graduate scheme doing B2B tech and started there. But however many years later, nearly 20 years later, oh my gosh, I'm still in the industry.
That's so cool, though. I know you said nearly 20 years later. I'm like, I've gone past 20 years. Okay. Okay. So what attracted you to the industry?
I think it was very much around appreciating the power of communication in terms of what good communication can do. Like I say, in terms of I enjoyed having, conversations with people and debates. I'd often be the person that would take the kind of the difficult side. If we had debates, I'd be the person that would take a difficult side of a debate, not necessarily because that's what I agreed with, but just to almost kind of maybe challenge myself to see if I can use the right kind of content or language or whatever to be able to get somebody to at least, even if they wouldn't necessarily think a different way, but to at least understand a certain way of thinking or to understand that viewpoint. And, from then doing research into different industries where you could do that, law definitely wasn't an option for me. It was like, I wasn't going to go down that route. But kind of, then realizing that actually businesses and brands use, the power of communication to do that, to convince us to buy or to convince us to, take certain actions. That's what appealed to me. So I thought, give that a go, and I enjoyed it.
Oh, lovely. Love it. Okay. Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. So I want to move into a little bit of your lived experience. So I always start off by asking all my guests this question, which is, when did you become aware of your ethnicity? Now, that's not to say that, you don't know you're a Black girl, or I didn't know I was a Black girl growing up. It was just that moment, where the outside world kind of, racist outside world meets your world. And for me, that was going off secondary school, 11 years old, and hearing about Chelsea Smilers and hearing about them, cutting you from one side to the next, as long as you're Black or brown. So being quite scared and hearing about that as a youngster. Not saying I didn't know about things like Mississippi burning and all the other things that were happening and some of the stuff that happened in the past. But, this is where it met my world, So that's what I was, so what's your take on that?
I think for me, it was probably actually in primary school. So growing up in the 80s, and it's a story that actually my mum tells me that one day I came home and told her that somebody had called me the P word, and I was like, "What is that?" Asking my mum, and she was like, "Well," she explained to me what it was, and I I think for me it was that frustration of actually, well, that's not me, because they were using almost like using the wrong racial slur, but then being angry that you're somebody who was supposed to be a classmate, a peer, is then, is now insulting me based on the colour of my skin. And obviously there's levels of ignorance just because they clearly didn't know what they were talking about.
Yeah.
And that kind of, it was that experience then. And then around a similar time as well, again, being in the 80s when that classic Christmas song would come on, Feed the World, the, is it Band Aid or whoever it was, Live Aid, whoever it was. And that, being, Black African, and everybody thinking that, oh, that's where you're from, you're from somewhere that is, covered in poverty, or, people, like, everybody's got flies going around their face, and people just making comments and things like that. As a child, it was hard. And I always say now, I hate that song. And I hear the lines in it now, it becomes even more and more problematic. But it just reminds me of, though, like in the 80s, hearing that and people being, mocking me, sorry, for relating me to that, and thinking that I'm then less than. Thankfully, I was always quite a confident child, so it didn't really get to me too much, but it probably more annoyed me than anything else.
It would, considering that the song was supposed to be helping children, for one, although you were not one of those children, clearly. But it's supposed to be about helping children, but yet you turn this into something to now demonize and make fun of.
Exactly.
And that's quite traumatizing for you. So then now you associate this song with that. Do you know what I mean? That it's awful. Really
it wasn't not the nicest of experiences, but
definitely not. It's very traumatizing for a child. You think about your inner child. That's a lot to deal with growing up as a little Black girl, just trying to navigate just life in itself. So it's not easy. So no, I get that. I appreciate you sharing your experience as well. Moving a bit more into the workplace, have you ever felt like your race, ethnicity has held you back within your career at all?
So I don't think so. And this is one of those things where, I look back on, especially like the early days of my career, and I was quite lucky to get the role in the agency that I got. And I very much was looked after in terms of promotions and opportunities and things. And so from my perspective, at least looking back then, I'd gone into it, we grew up being told, you have to work hard, work extra hard. And that is what I did. I went in and got my head down and worked hard and got rewarded. So I was at my first agency for nearly 7 years. I was never having to ask for a promotion, never having to really,
that's great.
You know what I mean? So for me, I'd say that I don't think it was. Who knows? Maybe I could have got.
But that's great. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing.
Exactly.
Like, you don't have to find one. It's fine. Like, I feel like if you had a situation where you haven't experienced that, that's great. That's what this platform's for. It's to share those you have and haven't. So there's no right or wrong answer. It's your truthful answer, right? So
exactly. So from my experience, I think maybe there were people who might have maybe got those promotions a little bit faster than me. But I think for me, I got to work on some great accounts. I got some great opportunities and really, enjoyed my time there. And I think sometimes, though, I was probably actually quite naive in terms of what was maybe happening in other parts of the sector, because for me, like I say, I was working hard and I was getting rewarded and recognised for it, and not realising that maybe actually there were people with not having that same experience in different agencies or in different comms teams and things. But, I can't necessarily look back and think there were specific events or moments that I think maybe I was held back because of my ethnicity. But I will say that I probably did. I think in the past I had a client actually who let's say didn't warm to me. And sometimes you just kind of have that feeling. It's that that gut feeling that we all kind of know. I mean, I would still say I don't know if it's because she didn't like me because I was Black or because I was a woman or because both. But she definitely didn't warm to me. Would definitely kind of be a bit more willing to kind of critique any recommendations that I made, or would challenge things a little bthink more that she wouldn't necessarily do with other people on the team. That's kind of one thing that definitely sticks with me.
That sticks with you. Yeah. I think that's interesting. And would you say, I suppose that's maybe a similar one. Because my next question is, have you experienced or witnessed racism in the workplace, and how was it handled? I mean, obviously that was one that was more of an undercurrent, so it wouldn't say.
It was an undercurrent, yeah, because I mean, she would kind of. She never used the word aggressive. I will say that she didn't use the word aggressive, but similar words in terms of the way that I was like giving advice to her. And although interestingly, so even though my colleague would give similar advice and would never get the same response, like was never described as being, you know, a bit too aggressive with their feedback. So, like I say, I don't know what it was she didn't like about me, but she certainly didn't like me. In terms of how that was handled, though, my at the time it was just before I was about to go on maternity leave anyway, so it kind of gave us an opportunity to just kind of speed up my transition off the account, because I was very much I can't be bothered to deal with this anyway. Which I kind of think, reflecting on it now, part of me wonders maybe I should have challenged it more, or like challenged my boss at the time to challenge it a little bit more. And I probably think he probably would have done, but because I was just like, look, I'm going, let's get the other person in to take over. You know, I don't have the time or energy to deal with this woman. So that was an easy kind of way out. But I do kind of think maybe it would have been good to maybe stand up a little bit more to just challenge it and clarify.
Well, there you go. You've answered my next question, which was, you know, was there a time you wish you had spoken up or self-advocated? Because that's one time, I suppose, where you feel like reflectively. But at the same time, I feel like just listening to what you're saying, it sounds like you're just protecting your energy. And sometimes you're at a space where it's like, you know what, enough's enough. I'm going to go off and be on my maternity leave. You're not bringing any bad vibes. Let me just, you know what I mean?
I mean, who knows? Maybe had the person who was going to be taking over the account, or there's somebody else on the team who was from an ethnic minority or something, maybe I would have felt more inclined then to do something, because it wouldn't have been fair on me to kind of hand that over to, you know, another Black woman to lead. But it just so happened that it was a white man I was handing it over to. So I was like, you know what, you can have it. You can do it.
Very nice. So other than that, there's not been anything else where you thought, oh, I wish I'd spoken up or self-advocated or something like that you can think of?
Not necessarily for myself. I think there have been times where I do feel like I've probably spoken up for others. Okay. So, you know, trying to speak up for people when maybe, you know, some people are kind of that little bit quieter about the work that they do, or, you know, how well they're doing. And, you know, we always know that often there are other people who will shout a lot about the work they do, or maybe claim other people's work. So I will try to make sure that I can do that, especially if I'm in a kind of management position. But I think there probably are, again, probably maybe some instances where I think, oh, you know what, maybe I could have been a little bit more vocal for somebody else, like rather than just saying something. But I think generally I've probably done as much as I can overall, trying to kind of stand up for people. I think, you know, if you've got that opportunity to do that, then it's always important to do it, you know, do what you can.
No, I agree. And you do that's it. That's exactly it. You do what you can. Exactly it. So code switching, because this is something that I like to touch on. So do you feel like we can leave with our authentic voices in the workplace, or will we be forever code switching?
So this is an interesting one, because I kind of think code switching in itself, you know, sometimes people do it as almost like an act of protection, almost like you do it maybe because actually if you feel like part of your identity or something could be under ridicule or attack from other people, so maybe that's the reason why you might try to kind of assimilate to the group that you're in. And I think organizations need to do a good job then of making sure that they can create places where people feel comfortable to actually not feel like they have to code switch or assimilate to be like other people in that space. So that's kind of like switching around here. I do think, though, we should be able to lead with an authentic voice, but then there's a lot of work to be done by the workplaces that we're in to make sure that we can lead with our authentic voice, you know? And until they do that, then for some people, if you can't get out of that workplace for whatever reason, then you might feel more comfortable or more confident that you have to switch who you are. That's not saying that's a good thing, but, you know, you've got to do that. At the same time, though, you know, when we talk about bringing your authentic self to work, I do think you have to caveat that and say, bring your authentic professional self to work. I say, I probably wouldn't talk to a client in the same way I talk to my kids on a Monday morning. I probably wouldn't talk to colleagues the same way I talk to my girlfriends or something when we're out or whatever and reminiscing and chatting. So I don't think we necessarily have a one authentic self. We probably do have slightly different versions of ourselves for different groups and situations. So, within the workplace, yes, you need to make sure that you are comfortable and you can sit with yourself in terms of who you are, but then you still have to be professional. So you still need to be able to turn up and present yourself in a professional way, or respectful. So you still have to have those standards around timeliness and listening to people intently and all of that stuff. And I think that's important too. I hear stories of people saying, maybe it's might be tapping into that conversation around generations in the workplace or whatever, but I do hear people that talk about, they've got members of their team who sometimes just refuse to do certain parts of their job or to do certain things. They're saying maybe it's because they don't want to, or that's not part of who they are or whatever. And I think, okay, if there's a genuine problem with this task or something that's maybe doesn't align with your ethics or whatever it might be, or you're not able to do it, fine, address that with your boss or manager and have that conversation. But at the same time, though, sometimes you can't necessarily pick and choose what it is you want to do if you have got a job to do. So again, I think it's around your authentic professional self is what needs to be brought to the workplace, whatever that looks like, though. So it's not bringing a self that's still the same as everybody else. Like I say, it's around making sure that you feel comfortable and confident to be you. But the workplace has to be able to create a space where people feel like actually they can be comfortable and not have to change who they are.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, absolutely. And when did you become aware of the colour bias within our industry? I mean, for me, I know it became quite stark to me when I started going to more networking events and getting a bit more involved in the industry. And it became very, very clearly apparent to me then. And then obviously seeing lots of reports coming out and things like that. But for me, definitely seeing it in the space, because before that, you're in your own work bubble. So you're with your colleagues and blah, blah. It's once you step outside of it, it's like, oh, okay. Or you hire in agencies or, that's kind of when I started to really notice it. What was it like for you?
I'd say the same. I think it's around once I started to step outside of my own workplace, which was quite relatively late. I think as you start to go to events and conferences and things, and you're seeing what the sector looks like, and it's the same people who are doing speaking opportunities, sitting on panels, the same types of people getting recognised or celebrated with awards and things. It's seeing that stuff and then hearing the types of stories and experiences that other people are having. You start to think, hang on a second, this isn't right. And I think for me, especially, probably when I started doing more work with, when I met Elizabeth Bananuka, who runs BME PR Pros. I think it must be around 2017, maybe 2018, the early days of that. And kind of starting to almost see some of the work that she was doing and hearing some of the stories as well from that. You kind of realise actually there's a lot that our industry needs to deal with. Back then there was a lot then, and there's still work to be done. There have been some improvements, but there's still a lot of more work that needs to happen. And like I think I mentioned before, I was probably quite naive maybe in the early days of my career, thinking that everybody was having the time of their life, but realising that they're not. Kind of makes me want to try to do a bit more to hopefully, hope that other people have the same type of experience that I did at the start of my career.
Yeah, I understand that. I think that's interesting, like you say. I mean, most people who've come on the platform have said similar things. Like once you get into the industry and you start networking, that's when it really kind of hit home. That actually,
and you go to things and you feel like, okay, hang on a second, I'm the only black woman here again. First of all, you think it's a one-off. Oh, okay, fine. You go to others. Again, and it's like, okay, what is going on? You might start to try to justify it and say, oh, this is just a particular industry or particular sector, but then you realise that it's the same no matter what sector or industry.
It's pretty much the same. And yeah, I mean, being the only black woman in the boardroom, it was something that I was used to for quite a long time. But and it would be like, if you see somebody else, you're like, oh my God, yes, somebody
Yeah,
else.
you get
Yay!
excited.
Like, and I still feel like that. Now I see something, I'm like, yay, that's great. So
No, it's true. I'm the same as well. I will get excited. I mean, because it's still, in fact, probably frustrates me even more now if I do go to an event and I'm the only black woman there. I'm like,
what's
what is going
happening?
on? Yeah, yeah. We still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, there is. There's a lot of work to do because I feel like there's still a lot of gaslighting in the industry. So yes, definitely some work to do. So in terms of the ethnicity pay gap, clearly we know there is one. We know the PRCA, the Race and Ethnicity Equity Board, they put out a report about this a while ago. I just wanted to get what your thoughts are about the ethnicity pay gap. Because I feel like at this point, like if we know there's a disparagement in terms of, there's massive glaring stats that show that there's an industry problem when it comes to diversity, you think that they'd try and make sure that you pull your socks up on this area with the few that you do have, right? So, like, it's just mind-boggling to me. I'm sorry. So, what are your thoughts? Sorry.
It is mind-boggling, and I think it's kind of embarrassing as well. In all honesty, I feel like we've been talking about it for a while now. Organisations know what they need to do, but it feels like not enough organisations are actually doing anything about it. And I'm glad it's obviously been spoken about more publicly, which is good. Yeah, great to have those conversations, but actually we want to see more action. There's like, obviously you mentioned the PRCA, there's the work that people like us have done with PR Week and things. I think that's great. But, even their most recent one, I think there weren't actually that many of is it their top 100 agencies or something? I can't remember the exact number, but a lot of the big agencies on the PR Week list didn't submit their figures. So it's a bit like they're the ones that are probably going to make the biggest difference. And if they aren't prepared to kind of show that and put their money where their mouth is, then we're going to be behind. We definitely need to see more people making a real effort to do the measurement, to find out where the gaps are, and then look at how they're filling them. People are doing. There's a lot of work that goes on in terms of looking at how you can get more ethnic minorities into the industry, and people look at. This is something that really frustrates me. I bang my drum about this. Everybody then defaults to colleges and university leavers. It's like, yes, we need more Black, Asian, ethnic minority people in the industry. Let's just go to a local college or the university and get more people in at entry level. Whereas actually, as you and I both know, because we're sat here having this conversation, there's a whole chunk of people who have been in the industry for a long time who are getting overlooked and not being put into those senior positions. The Black Comms Network, again, they put out figures as well earlier this year that talked about the fact that the number of people that are looking to leave the industry, the number of people that don't feel like they're going to be the most senior comms person within their organisation. So those people exist, but they're not being given the opportunity and the platforms to be able to move into senior leadership. And it's by doing that that's going to help to, address some of the pay gaps. And that will then, the consequences of having more of those people in senior positions will actually then help in terms of bringing in those people from the entry level, because they will then see people in senior roles as well. So I think organisations probably need to flip their thinking, and rather than just solely focusing on the people at, I don't want to say the bottom because that sounds really disrespectful.
No, but like the entry levels.
Rather than just looking at the entry level, look at the top, look at the people who are in some of those management roles, and what you can do to make sure that they are being given opportunity or training or development, whatever it is that they need, and sponsorship as well. Give them what they need to be able to move up. I think mentoring is great, but you see, people talk about, people don't just want mentoring, they want to be paid, they want to be promoted.
They do, exactly that. But I completely agree with what you're saying. It does need to be fixed, but I find it increasingly frustrating, because I feel like I've been saying this for ages. It's like the people are here, so it's like people are here. Nurture the ones that are here. Help them to rise up. That's where the word equity comes in. Like, what are we doing on the equity? So I find it increasingly frustrating. I feel like it's easy to say, let's do with the entry routes, and important. Yes, we do need that. But then what happens is you just got a load of people who are at entry level or mid level, and then they're not moving up. And what I've noticed, a clear pattern, and what you've also mentioned was highlighted by the UK Black Comms Networks. What was it? 2 Steps Forward, 2 Steps Back. report, it does clearly show that there is a pattern of people who are moving from being employed to setting up their own and wanting to leave to set up on their own.
Yeah.
And I find it interesting because I find that when I look at what's happening in the industry and some of the industry panels, the people that are of colour that are getting put on there, they have their own agencies.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily seeing that many from the in-houses. There are some, but a lot of the more prominent ones I'm seeing are those who have left the agency world, set up their own, and now are making their own, blazing their own trails. And now that everyone's like, oh yeah, let's bring them in. And that's what I see, looking at it.
And that's an issue. It's great that people are creating opportunity and creating, hats off to them, but it shouldn't have to take that. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Some people running their own agency isn't going to be for them. So are we saying that they're only going to be able to hit a certain ceiling because their employers that they've got aren't going to give them those opportunities?
That's my concern. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's really sad. It's a shame. And I think that, organizations really need to stop and take a look at that more closely and think about what it is that you're doing to make sure that that equity of opportunity does exist in your organization. I'm a process person. The work that I do, I look at processes and things, and sometimes I think, especially being an agency background person, often they're quite vague when it comes to what gives somebody the next step in terms of opportunity and promotion. It's this person did a great job on whatever, so now you are an account manager or an account director.
Yeah, or they're a better fit. And it's like, what's the fit? What is
that fit they're trying to fit into? And actually then let's put some really, really clear criteria and process into, well, this is what the expectation is to be a account manager or whatever it might be. So then it's clear to everybody, so that when I come to you and say, look, I'd like, I think I'm ready to be an account manager or whatever it might be, it's clear to everybody, it's clear to both sides that we say, okay, then I know what needs to be done and I've achieved those things. So then you as the employer can't really then turn around to me and say, oh, you're not quite the right fit, or we don't think you're ready there, because we've agreed what makes me ready. So then let's stick to it. I do think sometimes we have to add some of that, almost that rigor, to be able to make it really, really clear in terms of criteria and structure. And then if it means if you tell me no, I can wave it back in your face and say, you've got back on your word.
No, fair. Okay, moving forward slightly, I wanted to get your thoughts on allyship. What does it mean to you? What's like a good example of allyship for you?
Allyship is very much, for me, it's very much an action. So, really it's a verb. It's not just about saying, I'm an ally because, I'm nice to everybody from every marginalised group. It's very much around actively supporting people from marginalised groups or communities. I was trying to think of some examples, and I remember once in an agency that I worked in, there was a team went into a client meeting. It was a relatively new client that they went into, and the account lead was a woman. So I think it was 3 women that went into the meeting actually, and the client there was just really, really sexist, inappropriate, whatever. They all came out of this meeting were like, this person is just, really bad vibes, horrendous to work with. And I think what was great was that when they came back and explained to the director what had happened, he acted on it straight away without even saying to them, some people could be like, oh, it was a one-off, oh, you'll have meetings with other people, you've got plenty of other clients, so that was just a 1-hour meeting, whatever. He straight away kind of stepped in and was like, okay, then he's going to have a word with them to say, well, this isn't right, the way that you've spoken to my team. And actually, if this, if this person is involved again, we may well have to, reconsider the agency relationship. Which I thought was, I think is really, really hats off to anyone that does that. And for me, that was just a really good way to see somebody putting their money where their mouth is, literally, because actually in that situation he was prepared to walk away from because of the sake of his team.
I respect that.
Yeah, totally. And that's, for me, that was a really great demonstration of being able to being an ally and standing up for your team and your colleagues. And I think as well with allyship, people and any kind of work, when we're thinking about in the diversity inclusion space, we have to remember that none of these things happen in silos, though. So, and thinking about the importance of intersectionality. So you can't just focus on, supporting one or being an ally for one group, for example. If an organization has got a women in leadership type program or something, great. But then you also need to look at, okay, if all the women on it are white women, you then have to ask that question: why aren't any Black or Asian women, in that cohort, and what can we do to make sure that we recognise that as well? So it's important to be active. I think that's my point with allyship. It's not just about saying it and being nice. It's around being active and taking steps to really try to break down some of those barriers for people. When especially if you're in a position of privilege or power, very much using that to help others.
No, I appreciate that. I agree with that as well.
This series is sponsored by the PRCA's Race and Ethnicity Equity Board. To learn more about REEB and its mentoring scheme, visit prca.org.uk/REEB.
So tell me now, what motivates you? What inspires you to keep going?
Well, I have 2 children and a mortgage to pay, so I have to carry on.
That definitely helps.
that helps every morning. But I mean, even aside from that, and obviously, I do have 2 children. I want to set a good example for them too. It's not just about putting food on the table, but actually just being an example to others as well. And I think that's probably only something I've realised in more recent years, actually, that because we know that there aren't that many, senior Black women in the industry, I kind of feel like I have got a bit of I don't know if it's a responsibility or something to try to let other people, to be an example to others. I remember I often do talks at Salford University, so it's not far from where I am, and they do a master's in PR and communications. And a couple of years ago, I went to go and do a talk there. It was great. Kept in touch with some of the students, and one of the students there was a young lady from Nigeria who'd come to do her MA, and she'd written a blog. And in the blog post, she taught us about the fact that she didn't really see where she fit within the PR sector here. Like, she didn't really know. And then I still remember in her line, she mentioned that one day they had a talk, and I'm like bragging, bigging up myself. And I came in to do this talk, and she was like, actually, it was just really, really comforting to see a Black woman who's got experience of PR being able to come and share her experience. And for her, that made her feel a little bit more confident in terms of actually what she might be able to achieve in the industry. And like it really did touch me, it really moved me. But
I mean, it's very true though. It's so true, and I feel like that's why it's needed. Because I think about, I don't know what your trajectory was like, because I know you mentioned obviously getting into it and studying, but I didn't start out wanting to do comms. Like, I went to the Brit school, I was doing dance and graphic design, and then I took a module in marketing, and that's what piqued my interest into the whole comms. There wasn't no one at my secondary school telling me, oh, well, this is a career option or whatever. Like, it wasn't waved out there. So I can see why it's important for us to have visibility, because even I went and done a talk at my old university as well, and it was really nice. So the amount of students that came up to me afterwards, and I've done a master's in PR. I went and spoke to them about a few things, and I'm meant to go back there to help them with their crisis comms, actually. But what's interesting is just the amount of people that came back to me and was just like, particularly the girls of colour, they would come back and be like, this is really good, really interesting that you had that background, and you don't always feel like it, but then sometimes you realise, oh, actually, you are touching somebody else's life or helping to inspire somebody else. So I think that's nice that she wrote a blog and mentioned you. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it really was. And I think, like you say, when people use the line, you can't be what you can't see, but sometimes it's true. Like,
it's very true.
The idea that that can exist. I don't think I'm necessarily at the top of the chain or, the top of the industry, but if where I'm at inspires somebody to keep on going and to keep on trying, to persist in their careers, then that's a good thing, and I'll continue.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a bit different, a bit more maverick. I don't care about the chains, or I feel like it's like, what are you doing? Are you happy? Yeah. Because success is up to you, is that measured by you. You know what I mean? So like, I feel like sometimes the Western world is to be like, oh, are you here? Are you there? Well, actually, are you happy? And are you happy with what you're doing? And are you someone who actually inspires you because they're happy where they are and they do something that they actually enjoy? that to me is winning, you know? So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that example. So thank you. And what about on your journey? What would you say you found what would you say you found most challenging so far on your journey? As we speak about your motivations already.
So I think challenge has probably been, in all honesty, it probably has been kind of, okay, maybe two challenges. One was moving from London to Manchester and navigating, a different PR scene and sector.
Yeah.
And actually, at the time, I then moved from doing more B2B work and doing more consumer. So that was a challenge in itself, and having to like build up a whole new network. So that was quite challenging. And I think there again, I was lucky enough to move onto a maternity leave contract, which ended up staying in for a long time, and had a boss who believed in my abilities and skills and stuff, and was like, well, yeah, you've done B2B and corporate, you're perfectly capable of doing consumer work too. Yeah. And having something to say, I was like, okay, then cool, fingers crossed. I ended up staying there, for another 7 years. Right. So that was a big challenge.
Massive challenge, especially from London to Manchester. I like Manchester. Yeah. That is a huge different cultural shift.
Exactly. That was massive. And then I think, secondly, in all honesty, it has been the past 18 months in terms of going it alone and doing it by myself. I'm somebody who, I'll take a risk, but I like to take a measured risk. I'm not somebody who's like, just like that. Let's just risk it. I like to understand, what are the options and all of that stuff. So because when I started on my own, it was quite impulsive. I didn't go into the start of 2023 thinking I'm going to start my own business this year.
Okay.
Far from it. So to then be able to say, right, I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to actually back myself for once. It's not about other people backing me. It's about me backing myself and being able to charge people for my time and for my experience and my knowledge. That was quite a challenge because that takes a bit of a change in mindset. I always think that, I found it easier charging agency clients, thousands of pounds for whatever it is, but to then go to somebody and say, you are going to give me your money and you're going to pay me directly, it feels really different. So it very much is about changing my mindset in terms of how I think about it and not feeling so, I guess maybe not so scared to do it, probably.
Yeah, no, I get that. And well done for keeping and persevering. And, I think that makes sense that you're going to feel that way, particularly coming from come from a safe environment to more of a risky environment. And like you said, if it's bigger agencies, you can make sense of it. And then you're like, if it's someone smaller company or a startup, you might start thinking, oh my God. So no, I get it. And it is definitely a mind shift, even I say in terms of how you approach work, because you can design it around your life. And even that sometimes feels foreign. I remember when I first started out like working independently, and like I might schedule and have something that I've got a free period there. And I'm like, what do I do this time? Like, it's just, I was so used to doing this and doing that and doing that. And it was just like, breaking molds and breaking, do you know what I mean? It was like, it was so weird, that mind shift. I completely identify with it. I get it. I still have those moments where it's like, oh,
No, it really is. I mean, I found for a long time, for example, at lunchtime, I'd still restrict myself to an hour of lunch.
Yeah, then you realise, you're like, why am I doing this?
What am I for?
It's so strange. I think it's part of I don't know, I feel like it's part of that work indoctrination. You're in that and it's like, right, that's it. You step out and it's a bit like, oh, can I do this? Am I allowed? Is this okay?
Exactly. Like, being able to kind of finish early without checking with anyone. Finish at 3 o'clock or whatever. It's like it's my time. That's
but it's amazing. But it makes sense though, because even I was saying this to my mum the other day. I was saying that I read a study somewhere, and they're talking about how scientists and experts are now coming up saying how the workday was designed initially for men, based on very archaic times, but essentially, we can get through our day in less hours. That it's just that they are prolonged, essentially. And I'm like, it makes sense though, because when you work for yourself and you start getting things done and whatever else, you realize it's just like, well, no, actually, there's a lot of hours that are in there that don't need to be in there. All these pointless meetings that you're like, we could have said that quickly by email, and you know what I mean? Like, it's interesting. It is so interesting. So I find it fascinating talking to others who are self-employed as well, because, we can compare notes like this. It's like, really? So moving on a bit. When you're obviously you're self-employed and you're running your own consultancy, but when you were an employee, what was it that you was looking for from your employer? What would you say makes a good working environment? And you can use your own consultancy if you want, or
So, okay, so from my agency career, 2 of the agencies that I've worked in, I was there for around 7 years for each of them. So for me, that's definitely a sign that they were doing something.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Yeah. And when I think about that, there were things like being treated as, as a person, as an individual, having somebody who sees who you are, your individual, people who see your skills and whatnot and strengths and stuff. But actually, there's also an element of that like psychological safety as well. Being able to kind of have conversations with people, being, no fear of failure. So, you know what, if you get something wrong, nobody's going to kind of bash you for it. Very then focus on like, okay, what are we going to do about sorting it out or finding a solution for it, like helping you to grow through that process. Not that we're failing all the time, but when you do get something wrong, it's like you have the support. And that kind of, again, just ability to ask questions or be able to challenge things without fear of it coming back to bite you, kind of thing. Nobody's going to come for you afterwards. I think it was very much around those types of things where you feel comfortable and confident to be able to do a good job, but also to kind of to push things and challenge things as well. So if you thought that if you think something's not right, being able to question it and ask why, and ask why we do it that way or what's happening here. If you want to make a suggestion to change something, people being open to those suggestions. My role at one agency, I was given the opportunity to lead on operations, and that was very much because I was often the person, I might have been problem solving or firefighting things and solving things for the organisation, but I was free to kind of make those suggestions. And then thankfully, my boss at the time decided to turn that into a more formal role, which was great. I was thankful for that. But it's because we were in a space where I could say, actually, hang on, why are we doing this that way?
Yeah.
Just because we've already done it that way, let's try and do it better.
Yeah.
I think for me, that's kind of the type of thing that makes a good working environment. And also being able to kind of laugh with the people that you work with, having a bit of, we're not really.
We need to. We're humans. We're not robots.
We're humans.
Like, we're human beings, not human doings. We're
exactly. We need to be able to. Like we just said, how many hours you spend working a day. You need to be able to kind of have fun with the people that you're working with. You don't need to become best friends with everybody, but you need to at least be able to know that you can chat to them, you can laugh with them. Where you do have those moments when things go wrong or things go really well. You can still get your heads together and just enjoy it. You want to be able to work somewhere you think, actually, if we have got to work late or we have got to work here, really focus on something, you don't mind doing it with those people. You're all in it together, and you're all gonna back each other and support each other.
Yeah. I agree with that. And what would you say, what does a good environment with that reflects DEI look like?
So, I mean, the point that I made around that kind of psychological safety, I think, is an important one, because there's like the diversity bit is one piece, but that's almost just more about the numbers and being able to say, hey, we've got this number of people from this group and this number of people from that group. But if those people don't feel like they can speak up, if they feel like they're going to be shut down or ignored and things, then your diversity work is pointless. It's very much around inclusivity and belonging and helping them feel like they have got a space and they can contribute, they're being included, and they've got an opportunity to progress as well, which kind of goes back to that what I was saying before around making sure that you're giving people room to be able to progress. It's not just saying we've got all these people here, but what if people know that they have got as good a chance as becoming a director as their peers, then that's a good thing. They want to feel like they have got a chance, they have got an opportunity in that workplace, because then they're going to contribute more as well and going to put do their best work if they feel like they can be if they feel comfortable and confident and they feel like they can do their great work, then and they've got a chance to progress through that and rise up the organisation, then you're most likely to get the best out of them.
Yeah, I agree with that. Makes complete sense. It does. And I feel like all these things should just be common sense. You know what I mean?
It should be.
But everything's a learning curve, right? Everything's a learning curve. So moving into some of your proudest moments, right? So what would you say has been one of your proudest moments? Could be work or personal. We know the children are definitely a proud moment. We know for sure. Okay.
Yeah. As much as they drive me mad, they definitely are a proud moment. I think I'm probably actually combining the two. So, I think I had my old son, I had him when I was 26. I was a senior account executive in a big, in a growing agency. So being able to kind of do that and, navigate being a working mother, for me, I'm very, very proud of the fact that I did that. I went on maternity leave, came back kind of, able to kind of carry on with my career and still, I like to think I'm doing an okay job with him, still looking after him, that was a challenge, but I think, I'm proud that I was able to get on and do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's something to be very proud of. Absolutely. I'm definitely in the agency world because that's one of the worlds that I definitely avoided because I used to hear so much negativity about working in the agency world when my daughter was much younger. So I kind of avoided them.
I mean, I keep saying I was really lucky with my first agency because I went on maternity leave, came back. I worked 4 days a week. I was able to come back, reduce my hours, but
amazing.
But there was no kind of indication that would stop me from progressing. So I came back and were very much like, okay, you were on track to be becoming an account manager. So let's look at what we can do to keep that going very much at your pace, give opportunities and things. So yeah, I was very, very lucky and very grateful and thankful that, I think it's a proud moment for me.
I think that's brilliant. And what would you say has been a career highlight for you?
A career highlight, I think. So there were things like specific pieces of work that I loved working on. Years ago, I did a piece of work with St. John Ambulance, and even though we always say it's PR, not ER, we actually did a campaign where we know for a fact that it was able to save somebody's life, and that was quite powerful. It was all to do with first aid and the difference that first aid can make. And we got an email from the client got an email from somebody saying that having seen that campaign, they were able to save their child's life. Yeah. And that was like really, really, it was, a long time ago, but it's one of those things where you think,
you're making a real difference. Yeah.
Yeah, making a real difference, definitely. Yeah. But then also kind of not a specific not a specific campaign. Last year I was listed on Provoke Media's Innovator 25 list for EMEA, which I thought was I was really shocked to be added to that. I don't often get put on lists, so I was very happy to be on that list and just acknowledging some of the work that I've been doing.
Yes, well done you.
In like the diversity inclusion space, and trying to do more for for Black and brown people in the sector. Mm-hmm. So that was a real highlight for me. Made me feel good.
Yeah, it should do. I think that's lovely. I think that's really, really nice. So moving a little bit into the industry and where it's going. So what are your thoughts about how the industry is going to evolve over the next few years, particularly with AI? Because you've got some people who are like, oh my gosh, no, it's going to take our jobs. Now, I'm quite open to AI. I feel like, you've got to be involved. It's coming whether you like it or not. And to be quite honest, I like some of it. Like I'm a fan of ChatGPT. I'm a fan of those types of ones where I'm like, oh, this kind of it can help simplify some processes for you. Do you know what I mean? So
it very much can. I think, I think there's definitely benefits to using AI, using it properly and appropriately. It can speed things along in so many different ways in PR and comms world. And I think, if agencies and teams, in-house teams can work out how to best use it for them, I think then that's probably the key. Is what does it mean for us and how do we use it for the way that we work in a way that's appropriate and ethical as well, because obviously there are still some challenges when it comes to thinking from an inclusion perspective and stuff.
Yeah, which is plug at least I know Effie Canura, she's got her own platform, isn't it? Lila, and that's built around inclusivity. So I'll plug that. Yes.
Yeah, give her a shout out. Yeah, she's doing amazing things. But I think aside from that, from the broader world, I think that some agencies and things in the sector in itself, I think, is struggling a bit at the moment. But I do think once we come out of this, I think there's a really good opportunity for the kind of the smaller and independent agencies to make a big difference in the sector, partly because you start to see more now that are kind of really good at focusing on or connecting with specific groups and communities. So I think there's a really good opportunity for them to kind of really show their worth and show their value even more. You know, as we see that brands are struggling to kind of get it right when they are speaking to or representing certain types, you know, certain communities or marginalized groups. You know, there are now plenty of, you know, agencies or service providers or whoever, or, you know, individual consultants that can really, really tap into those audiences for brands and to help them to understand how to get it right. So I think there's a really good opportunity for them, like, as we move forward, to really make a difference and to make a dent on some of the big agencies. Not that big agencies are bad, but I think those specialist ones have got a really good opportunity to make a change and make a difference.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. So what would you say are some key lessons that you've learned throughout your career? Maybe 2 or 3.
So probably that, like, I think about, you never know who's watching you, and that can be good or bad.
That's a good point. It does sound a little bit like a horror movie, but yeah.
No, in good ways and bad ways. So the fact that, you know, when you are in any situation when you're working, just think, yeah, you know, you never really know who's watching you, who's taking notes, who's making a mental note. But use that to your advantage. I always say that's a good thing. You use that to your advantage, don't you? So you're trying to make a positive difference.
Yeah.
When you are in the room or, you know, on a virtual meeting, whatever it might be. I'd also say not being afraid to stand up for yourself is probably a good, you know, we talked about it earlier, be able to stand up for yourself, put yourself forward for things. Because people won't always do that for you. So I think
they will not do that for you for the most part. Not always. Yeah. For the most part, you do have to self-advocate, and that's not because people are mean. It's because most people are thinking
selfish. Selfish and lazy. Most people are selfish and lazy.
Yeah, that going on too. I'm trying to get my PR response in there, and I know if we get selfish. Yeah, actually, it's true.
It's not they won't necessarily naturally always think about those things.
No, it's true. It's true. Everyone thinks about themselves first. Particularly in the society, it's all about me. So that comes first. So yeah, that's something that I've definitely heard quite a lot, which is definitely to, you know, put yourself, self-advocate, push yourself out there.
Don't be afraid to do it. And you know what? If you might get a no, you might get turned away, but it's better to have that than think later on, oh, I wish I'd gone for that. You know, I wish I'd put myself forward for that opportunity or whatever it is. So, you know, I think that's a good thing to do in a way that you feel comfortable doing. And definitely go for it, I'd say. And I think a general lesson is always just being curious about things. I think wanting to know what's going on with maybe I'm just nosy. I use the word curious. Maybe I'm just nosy. But, you know, reading lots, listening lots, you know, watching things, being open to new things and new perspectives and whatnot. I think just showing an interest in stuff and in people, I think I'd say that's probably a lesson that I've definitely got throughout my career, is that's a really important trait to have, just having that curiosity.
Yeah, I understand that. I appreciate that. Now, what advice would you give to young people considering entering the industry, young people of colour in particular?
I mean, again, remember that people, you don't know who's watching you. So yeah, keep an eye on.
Why is that stuck in my head now? Why does it feel like someone watching me? That's what's come to mind. You put that in my mind now, okay? Whenever I think of that, it's going to come to mind. But yeah, sorry.
But it is true, though. You just never know kind of who is going to be keeping an eye on you. People might then come to you. It's a bit like, you know, on LinkedIn and stuff, you know, you don't know who's watching your content, and somebody randomly then messages you like, oh, I thought that was really interesting. You're thinking, I didn't even know you could see what I was posting. So even in a work environment as well, just being mindful of that. But then also, I think it's really important, you know, when we talk about the fact that our industry is still struggling from a diversity perspective, finding people that you can connect with. So it's important to kind of look for a community, you know, people that you can just connect with and share experiences with or ask questions of. I think that, as much as possible, is probably quite an important thing to try to do, especially as you start to build your confidence, you know, in the sector. I think it'd be good to have people to lean on whilst you do that.
Yeah, that makes complete sense and leads quite nicely into my next question, which is, where do you go for industry support?
So, now I think it's probably more kind of groups like, I mean, obviously I'm involved with the PRCA and attend kind of events with like CIPR and stuff. And they're part of an organisation called Agency Hackers too, who do a lot of sessions where people can kind of share thoughts and ideas. But I think a community that I've really felt I've benefited from is BME PR Pros. So I was involved in their mentoring scheme probably back in 2024, and still on a WhatsApp group with the other. That's 2024. Sorry, 2019. I think it was.
2019. Okay.
I was on that mentoring, involved in that mentoring scheme as a mentor, and I'm still in a WhatsApp group with those same mentors, and also just kind of through different events and schemes that have been developed. There are now other people that I know in the sector who I'm happy to kind of ask questions of, or check in with and things, because it's a lot of people that you just feel like they're on the same wavelength as you, and it feels a little bit more comfortable when you do go to events or when you are on other things, that you see familiar faces and people that are happy, people that have got your back, people that are happy just kind of see that you're doing okay, or happy to mention your name and things. So I'd say that's probably kind of the community that I think I've probably.
I think that's good that you have that. Yes, a shout out to Elizabeth and UK BME Pros. I will say a shout out to Cam and the UK Black Comp Network as well. That's one of the ones that I go to for support. It's a really good community, as well as the ones that you mentioned, like CIPR, PRCA. And on the PRCA, and as I mentioned that, I will flag that the PRCA has a great resource, PRISM, which is the Public Relations, Inclusion, Support and Mentoring scheme that they've got right now. It's a new program brought to you by READ. And what I like about it is that it's a free structured mentoring, and it's for all sectors, available globally, created just for people who are Black, Asian and ethnically diverse, essentially, to help them to, move forward within the industry, which I think is great. So if anyone out there is interested, you can also check out PRCA's READ's PRISM. Mentor.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that there are so many now more of those types of groups that have grown, like since our day. Back in the day, those things didn't exist.
They weren't really there. No, but it's so nice to see. Like I was even saying to my guest that I interviewed just before you, that I was saying it's really interesting, because I always was at like a CIPR event or like a Women in PR, and it'll be like a sea of white people. And so it's a lot, and it's just like you said, sometimes you do want to see somebody that looks like you that's there, and it actually does create change. Some people look at it as cliche, but no, actually seeing somebody in that position just does help to instill a lot of motivation. Somebody who is of the same hue or complexion.
Exactly. So in that vein, I'll shout out people like us as well. Some of the
people like us. I'm actually interviewing Shiraz next week, actually. So yes. So shout out to people like us as well. But yeah, so I feel like it's an interesting one, like you said. I feel like it's an important thing that we do have these networks there, and I do love going to UK BCN network events, because it's just so lovely to look around the room and just see people of color professionals. Usually I'm looking around and I'm trying to spot someone who looks like me, and here there's a room full of people who look like me. It's pretty amazing. So I will say
we need to set up a splinter group in Manchester.
Yes, I think they're looking at doing one. They're looking at different regions. I know that's on the card, so I'm sure that will happen soon. You'll get one near us to you.
I'm there.
Okay, well, moving into mindset, I wanted to basically just check on a couple of things with you. This is our last section anyway, right? So your thoughts around internal mind war. So how do you manage self-limiting beliefs?
It's something that I probably struggle with, to be honest. It can be quite hard, again, especially working by yourself. You haven't got, I think I'm probably a people pleaser, so I haven't got people telling me I'm doing a good job. I need my ego boosted. Then you have to.
I get it, though. I do get it. That reassurance, like that validation. I get it. Especially when you're a people pleaser, which I have been in my life, and I get it.
Yeah, I get it. But I try to then just kind of try to be kind of rational, kind of look back, okay, then what are the things that I've actually done? So rather than thinking I haven't achieved anything, actually let's look at the things that I have actually achieved and done, and did it go well, and kind of asking myself the questions as if I was, speaking to a mentee or something. Well, what happened? How did it go? It wasn't a success, that type of thing, and realizing, okay, then things are going okay. So it's something that I think I probably constantly will struggle with as I go through this kind of self-employment journey. I think that's part of the thing as well, switching from being employed and having clear kind of opportunities to get insights and feedback and understand how I can improve, to now it's kind of all on me judging myself. Being able to kind of switch that is a bit of a challenge, but I very much try to kind of look at things in terms of, right, okay, then what is it I've done? What do I need to do? And be really that little bit clearer in terms of trying to understand, if something has gone well, and reminding myself of that, I'd say.
I think that's important, because I do something similar, which is if I have a day where I feel like I am kind of being hard on myself, I call it my low vibrational self. If she pops up and saying, well, you can't do this, you can't do that, I have to bring in my higher vibrational self, which is bringing through the examples, which is, you've done this, you've done that, you've done that. So what are you talking about? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
With yourself. Yeah, you do. It's like this. What they say. I used to always hear people say it, like I'm old school. Have a word with yourself, mate. And that's what it means, essentially. Okay? Yeah, it's literally have a word with yourself, okay? But in the right way. No, so thank you for sharing that. And looking back over your career, over your journey, would you do it all over again?
You know what? I think I would, to be honest, because I think you have those moments where you think about sliding doors moments and what would have happened if I'd taken that decision versus that one. But then you think, well, had I taken that decision, then this other thing probably wouldn't have happened, and I'm really happy about that. So I think generally I probably would do it all over again. I think I'm kind of all right with where I am now. I don't think I've got any complaints today.
No, I like that. I love that. I think that's so important. That's nice. And my question, which sometimes can throw up some funny results, funny answers. So what's been your best and worst advice that you've been given?
So worst advice was like, and I can't remember the exact way the word, it was just almost like basically somebody saying, like the client's always right. Almost like if the client says jump, you say how high, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And which was rubbish, basically. Our job is to be advisors, to provide counsel and to provide insight. So you have to try to do that. Obviously, the client might want something, but you can still try to question it, have a conversation. You may get to a point where they're not listening anyway, and you might end up doing what they've originally wanted. But to just kind of straight away do what they want, I just don't think that's right.
I agree. That's not what you're paid for.
Exactly. And then I think best advice, and it was somebody who said to me about always, and he didn't mean it in like a derogatory way, always making life easier for the person above you. And he didn't mean it in a way that was like tidying up after people and whatnot, but it was almost kind of, if you have somebody more senior and it's highly likely that they're going to ask you questions, think about the answers to the questions beforehand, whether that's to your boss, to your director, or to your client. Think ahead. Think about, okay, they're going to come to you with questions. What are those answers going to be? So you're almost kind of one step ahead for them. So making life easier, not in a doing their work, but in that kind of sense, of kind of thinking ahead and thinking.
No, that makes sense. I would flip that. I flip that into stay ready so you ain't got to get ready. So
Yes.
Yeah. I like that. I like. Okay. So my last question for you is, do you have any rules that you've implemented along your journey, along your career journey, basically, like to keep you going along? Like I used to, when I remember when I first started out and I was applying for different roles, and I always felt like if I didn't get promoted within my organization, then I'll go out and get promoted and keep moving up the ladder. Like I went there and just be like, I always found it really, really harrowing, if I'm honest, when I was meeting people and they'd be like, I've been here for 30 years. I was like, oh, like I could not believe it. Like, whereas, my mum's generation would be like, oh yeah, job for life, whatever. But I'm like, That was always like, oh my word, you've been here for how long? So my mind has always been like, all right, out, up, keep it moving, essentially. That was one of my rules when I was starting out. Do you have any that you implemented?
In all honesty, it's going to sound really cheesy, but I think my thing is just sort of like just being a good person.
Yeah.
Like, there's enough idiots and nonsense in the world. Don't be one of them. So I think if you are a good person, I like to believe that if you are a good person, then that comes back to you. Yeah, don't be a doormat. There's a difference between being a good person and being a doormat for people. Mm-hmm. But I do think being a good person brings kind of peace in your life. Yeah. So try not to, don't be an idiot. Be a good person.
I like that. Just don't be an idiot. Claire says, don't be an idiot. Okay?
Everybody with the same respect, and that's the people who you are working for, the people who might be supplying a service to you or a product to you, whatever it is. Everybody who you interact with, be a good person to them. And I do think that overall, that should make your life a lot easier, and hopefully you can then navigate your career that way. Because then if you're surrounded by people who aren't good people, you can leave, to go, they're not for you.
Yeah, I get that. It kind of reminds me of one of my late grands, because she used to always say something like, be good to people. That was it. She was just like, be good to people. You be a good person, be good to people. People follow you through. So I understand that. So thank you so much, Claire. It's been so nice to speak to you today. I really enjoyed our chat. We've come to the end, but I really did enjoy it. It's been lovely speaking with you. For anyone who is listening and wants to connect with you, can you tell them where to find you?
Yeah, sure. So thank you again for having me. I really enjoyed the chat. And if people do want to find me, my website is quansahconsulting.com, but I can also be found on LinkedIn, Claire Quansah, spelled Quansah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you for listening, everybody. I will be back very soon with some more wonderful people from the world of comms. Until then, stay blessed and stay tuned. Thank you and bye for now.